most is actually getting the least, and the person who needs the least is getting the most. It's kind of a mirror of some of the other slides we were seeing. Whereas an equity framework, I'll read the definition to you, that we all put in the money, the time, and the energy in proportion to the resources that we have access to, and we get back what we need. I'm going to read it again. We all put in the money, the time, and the energy in proportion to the resources that we have access to, and we get back what we need. So in this picture, they're all getting the same, and it's not working. Whereas in this person, they're getting what they need for it to work, and there's a different level. So when I go back using the equity framework to the work that we're doing in schools in Brattleboro, the 60% who are getting those free and reduced meals, they're getting what they need, they're getting what they need, and they're getting those meals. But taking an equity framework, clearly those 40% of students who are not getting it, they need some other support to make that happen. And so as individuals, if we can bring an equity framework to the work that we do, we can see where extra resources are needed to give the support to people so they get what they need. From taking an equity framework, we can also look at some other examples of cultural change. So for example, we have the Healthy Harvest Network. Has anybody heard of the Healthy Harvest Network? A couple people. Okay, so in southeastern Vermont, in the Brattleboro area, a group of food shelves and food pantries came together, realizing that they all had the same needs. They were trying to get more ready access to fresh, perishable, healthy foods. And sometimes one group would get a whole bunch of it at once and they couldn't manage it, and then another group got none. So basically they decided that they could break out of their silos of their own individual needs and their own food shelves. And by working together, they found new opportunities for getting more fresh, perishable food to their clients. So it's an example of a cultural shift that they've made to better serve the needs of their customers, or their clients. Another example of organizational change happened at Post Oil Solutions and Food Connects. As I mentioned earlier, we were trying to be that bridge between lower income consumers and the local food system. We did a lot of focus groups and had conversations with people of low income and learned what the barriers were. Instead of just trying to guess what they were or thinking we knew what they were, people gave input. And so we were able to design a new program that we called the Neighborhood Market that did our best to address some of the issues that they had. So for example, we had an EBT machine, we allowed for flexible payment options, and we had a sliding scale payment, which was putting that equity framework into practice. People pay what they could. And also, we brought the equity framework and we did our best to understand the iceberg that individuals brought with them. So for example, the coordinators did their best to have build strong relationships and trust with participants so that at the end of the month, if a participant was out of money or didn't have any funds left in their EBT machine, those participants felt comfortable enough to still come to the market, get their produce that they were supposed to pay for, but they were able to come and say, you know what, it's the end of the month, I'm out of money. And our coordinators were able to say, yeah, no problem, here's your stuff, come back next week and pay. And there was little judgment put upon the consumers so they felt comfortable. So that's an example of how we were able to take some of the learning from an equity background, equity framework to make those differences. It cost us more time and money to work with those consumers, but that was a priority for us in making that happen. Another example, which I think some of you might know about, goes back to the story of Jay and not going to the cafeteria for food. This is an image I stole from the Hunger Free Vermont video about universal meals. I highly recommend that video, which goes deeper into the issue of free universal meals. Here's an example of a policy change that's happening that's really addressing what's under the iceberg, especially for school meals in terms of stigma, and some of the other issues that are preventing kids from getting their needs met with school breakfast, school lunch, and even after school meals. So here's Jay, let's call him Jay. He has a choice to go to the cafeteria and get that free food and be really seen as that student who's getting free food, or go out and play and be part of the whole outside playing and social structure. So universal meal, the work that's happening around universal meals as a policy change is addressing some of the stigma and some of what's happening under the iceberg, is using an equity framework to make that happen. All right, I have one more example. Food Solutions New England is a group that's, I think it's been around for about 5 years. It's a network of organizations around New England. They've come up with a bold goal of local production and consumption of New England product of 50% by the year 2060. 50 by 60 is their goal. They, from the beginning as a network, they did a lot of work on the personal level. They looked at what's under the iceberg for a lot of people. They spent a lot of time on implicit bias, spent a lot of time looking at the equity framework, especially with a racial lens. And from the very beginning, they learned that there's no way we're going to reach this vision of 50% local food if we did not address the real issues of livable wages, racial equity, affordable healthcare, affordable housing, etc. There's no way we're ever going to reach this 50% goal without dealing with that. So maybe some of them had started with the approach of, yeah, we're going to build our food system, we're going to increase the amount of farms, we're going to grow more food, we're going to do all these things. But that was in reality, that wasn't going to work unless people were able to pay for the food. And they came to that realization early on. And since then, it's shifted the way that some of the work that's been done. So I've been to 2 of their annual food summits, and there's been a big focus on racial equity, been a lot of focus on ourselves, learning about what's under the iceberg for a lot of people. One of the cultural shifts they've made also because of that framework is looking at the food chain workers. So they've done a lot of work at doing the analysis of who works in the food chain, from farm workers, from fisher folk, from dock workers, etc., truck drivers, everywhere within the whole food system, all the way up to clerks at McDonald's, clerks at Hannaford, and dishwashers in kitchens. And so they've seen that actually there's all these people who work in the food system who can't afford to participate in this 50 by 60 goal. And so they've, again, shifted their lens to being supportive of the Food Chain Worker Alliance, and looking at the issues that people in the food system, especially the workers, are asking for. So they're doing some work with them to support those people, as well as look at policy changes that represent those interests. So in many ways, they're shifting their focus because of what people are asking for. Finally, I think one of the strengths of what they're doing in leading towards economic system change, they're taking a multi-state approach, and they're taking a whole food system approach, which, as I mentioned, starts on the farm and ends up in the kitchen. And by bringing all these different stakeholders together, they're able to organize, they're able to find important issues that they can have leverage on and make changes for. And bringing all these people together to fix our food system, ultimately to change the way the economy works. So I'm really looking forward to their next annual conference, which is in a few weeks.
So you've heard some examples of different levels of ways to begin to impact what's going on underneath the water. So I want us to take a few minutes, turn to the same people that you talked with a little bit earlier, and talk about some things that you're already doing that are really starting to get deeper and get at root causes, or some things that you'd like to be doing, so ways that you think that connections and organizing could become more a part of the work that you're doing. All right, we're going to have about 7 minutes to talk in your group.
All right.